Hello and welcome back. It's been a little bit. I had some stuff happen at the beginning of March, and I'm not really going to get into it. We lost one of our pets. That's really all I'm going to say about it. I don't want to talk about it, but let's just say it was a very rough month, and I did not feel up to filming anything. I wasn't even sure I was going to do it this month. It's already the 10th, I think. It's already April 10th, and I wasn't going to film this month. Then I've been just watching a lot of videos, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna film. Um, so yeah, so this is my reading uh plans, my reading, you know, everything I've read for the last 2 months. So there's a lot. So these are just the books I own, and I read these, and then there's a few library books and a few audiobooks, and like one digital. So I've read a lot of books. I'm very happy with myself at the moment, reading wise. Um, and before I really get into it, I want to film more about my reading. I know this is mainly my cross stitch channel. I think I'm going to make another channel and have that just my reading because I want to start doing like reading vlogs and like reviews of certain books because I really do love reading a lot, and I want to get a little bit more into it, and these are my videos that do the worst on this channel, so I want to just try to do it on a different channel and see maybe it does a little bit better. um so yeah, and like life stuff. Okay, so I did mention that we lost one of our pets. We lost one of our ferrets. We had to put him down. um just health issues that he had, and so that was very tough on both me and my boyfriend. We still have one female ferret, cat right here. This is Cloud. Um, she's a female. My boyfriend and me, we agreed on the name. I think I've probably mentioned this before. She's like 3 years old, but she's white. She looks like a Siamese. She's not a Siamese, but she looks like a Siamese. And we agreed on Cloud because she's white, so I agreed on that. He likes Cloud because of Final Fantasy. If you don't know about what Final Fantasy is, it is a Japanese RPG game, and one of the main characters' name is Cloud Strife, technically. So, yeah. So, and then we have a new pet that we got. We got a little hamster, just a little white, red-eyed hamster. She's a bit neurotic. She likes to bite, so not sure it was the best pet choice. Um, And we have been looking into getting another ferret just because we only have one ferret now, and they are very like social. Um, but apparently ferrets are kind of rare at the moment. We can't really find any, so it's not probably not gonna happen anytime soon. Other than that, I don't think anything really has happened. My life's very boring. I don't really do anything, so yeah, I think that's about it. Um, All right, so I'm going to go through my February, what I read in February, and then what I read in March, and then at the end, I will go through what I am planning to read in April. Spoiler alert, I've already finished one book, and I've actually finished two books, and I've almost done with another one. Actually, I'm almost done with two, and yeah, I've already like gone head first into my April TBR, so. But I'm not going to talk about the books that I've finished. Not going to talk about that. All right, so February. So I read 5 books in total in February, and 3 of those were audiobook, 2 of those were physical. Also, before I forget, so I have had Audible for a long time, a few years now, and I made the decision just a few days ago. I'm getting rid of it. I'm going to stop doing audiobooks. I'm going to try to read more Kindle because I do have a Kindle. I'm very much going to try to start reading Kindle more for the books like that I don't have just easy access to, that aren't at my library, that I don't already own, and that I don't intend to buy, which is a lot. I just don't have a lot of space, or I'd buy so many more books. You do not know how much I would love to have a book subscription box, but I don't have space for books right now. Um, so yeah, I feel like audiobooks just are not for me. I don't end up liking a lot of them because I hate the narrator. I'm gonna keep doing like a few books on audiobook, and it very much depends on who the narrator is. So if it's someone that I really like an actor, then I'll probably do it. There's a few books that I already know that I intend to do specifically on audiobook, specifically because of who is reading them. Um, so like I'll talk about it in a minute here because I did finish one of the books, but Series of Unfortunate Events, I'm rereading that series, but I'm listening to the audiobooks of that because I've never listened to the audiobooks. And Tim Curry, who is one of my favorite actors, he does the voice, or he does the reading of it, and I absolutely love him. He's got such a great voice, so I'm 100% going to keep doing those, but I'm probably not going to do them on Audible. I'm probably going to do them on Spotify. I use Spotify for my music, and I know that Audible treats its authors not great sometimes. I've seen some stuff about that. Was it Brandon Sanderson who is now boycotting? I think it's him who's now boycotting Audible because of just their policies and how they have a monopoly basically on audiobooks, and they don't compensate their authors very well. The percentage is very, very skewed in Audible's favor. So yeah, I'm gonna try to be stepping away from audiobooks. I mean, it kind of sucks just because the one reason I really like audiobooks is because you don't have to devote the time really to them like you do a book. And that's I mean that's the appeal of audiobooks, right? But I just feel like I don't end up liking books specifically because of the narrator. And you know, once a book's kind of ruined for you, it's kind of ruined for you. There's one book I'm going to talk about in a little bit because I did finish it, and I've seen like really good reviews of this book. I hated it, and I don't know if maybe I hated it because of the narrator. I don't know, but I did not like it. So I don't know. We'll get into that in a minute. Okay, so let's get into it. So as I said, I finished 5 books in February, 3 audiobooks, 2 physical books. Which is low for me for 2 physical books, like very low. I that was the one um month that so far that I've like kind of done poorly. I've been able to finish like 7 books a month so far, like even 5 books, like that's pretty good. I've I'm like doing so good. I know there's probably gonna come a month where I'm just in a slump, but so far so good. All right, I so let's get into. So I got my reading journal. If you don't have a reading journal, get one. I mean, it's absolutely stepped up my reading game so much. It really gets me way more motivated to read. All right, so the first book that I finished was The Wide Window by Lemony Snicket. This is the 3rd book in a series of unfortunate events. And as I said, I'm doing these on audiobook. However, this is the one that I didn't like. Not because of the book. I love the book. I didn't like it because they didn't have Tim Curry. I don't know why they didn't have Tim Curry do the narration. And I've looked into later books, and Tim Curry does most of them. But he doesn't do this one. I don't know if there's maybe some other ones that he doesn't do, but he does do the majority. I know that. But they had Lemony Snicket do the narration for this. So I don't if you don't know anything about a series of unfortunate events, Lemony Snicket is the author of the book series, but it is a pen name. He's not a real person. He's more of a character in the book series because he's basically like telling you that's what the book series is Lemony Snicket is basically telling you the story of these kids, and he is an agent of the VFC, which is the secret organization within this book series. So he was like friends with their parents, and he was part of, this secret organization, and part of the reason why they got killed was because of this organization. So he's just telling you this story. And in the story, quite often he will go in and out of the narration. So he'll be telling you about the story, about the Baudelaires, and then he'll just kind of like cut away and start telling you about like stuff that happened to him and stuff like that. So he's more of a character within the book series than he is a person, because he's not an actual person. I can't remember the name of the actual author, but I mean, you can find that on the internet pretty easily. So I'm unsure if the narrator for this audiobook is the actual author, or if it's like just an actor who was hired. Because let me stick it, not a real person. However, I will say that I did not like it very much. Um, he was just he's just the main reason issue that I have with most voice actors for audiobooks is I just didn't like it. It was very monotone. It just didn't do it for me. But with the end of this book, like this is I would say the first three books are the books that I have the most knowledge of. I have read the entire series, but I've read the first three books more than once. I've seen the movie. If you have not seen the movie with Jim Carrey in it, it came out quite a while ago. Um, but that is the first three books, and it does change stuff. Like the ending is very different, and so it does change stuff, but it is the first three books, and I've seen that movie a million times because I absolutely loved it. And I have seen all of the TV series, and that is so good. It follows the books. It's perfect. It's perfect. If you have read the books and you have not seen the series because you just don't like adaptations, watch it. Please watch it. It is so good. Um, just be warned though, even though it's a children's book series, it is kind of depressing. All right, moving on to The Golden Compass. Oh, I forgot to tell you. So The Wide Window, I finished that on February 7th, and I gave that 4 stars. Um, The Golden Compass. So I started this series, His Dark Materials. I always want to call this the Golden Compass series, but it is His Dark Materials. So I like basically knew the bare bones of what this was. I saw the movie with Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig when that came out. And I have seen bits and pieces of the HBO series, but I have not fully watched it, and that's because I knew that I wanted to watch or to read the series. So I'm home now. This is one of the book series that I is on my like goals to finish this year. So far, I'm doing pretty good. But yeah, so like if you don't know what this is, it is a fantasy series. It is set in a world similar to our own but different. Um, and so Lyra is the main character. She's a 12-year-old girl, I want to say 11, 12-year-old, somewhere around there. And every human in this world has a demon, which is basically a part of their soul, and it does take the form of an animal. And if you have not yet reached puberty, your demon can change form, so it can become any animal at any time. But once you reach puberty, it becomes one animal, and it can't change after that. It's set in that animal, in that form. And that animal does generally reflect the personality of the person. So like if you're evil, like there's one evil character and his demon is a snake. There are witches in here, and a lot of the witches have demons that fly. There was one sailor that was mentioned in this first book. His demon was a dolphin, I think, or like some kind of fish. So it does kind of take on your personality, and you can talk to it, like it talks back to you. They're like parts of your soul, but they're also like separate entities. They have their own personality as well. And it is very taboo in this world to touch someone else's demon. You don't do that. Your demons are allowed to touch each other, but you as a human, you are not supposed to touch another person's demon. That's very like taboo. So at the beginning of the story, Lyra lives in Oxford, the college in England, and her like uncle Azrael, he comes and he's trying to get funding, and she sees that the like high chancellor or whatever of the college is going to poison him, and she manages to stop him, and like stuff starts unfolding after this. Kids are going missing and they don't know what's going on. And when a mysterious woman comes and wants to take Lyra with her, and so the master of the college gives Lyra a golden compass, called an alethiometer, and she doesn't know what to do with it at first, but she kind of like she learns how to read it. It basically, you ask it a question and it will answer your question, but you need to know how to read it. And she is a prodigy. She knows how to read it very well. So one of her friends ends up getting kidnapped, going missing, and she wants to find him. And she finds out that this woman, Mrs. Coulter, who has taken her in, is not exactly on the up and up. She runs away. And stuff happens from there. An epic adventure. I'm not gonna go more into it, but she learns a lot of stuff that was kept from her, and that she has a bit of a destiny. And then the ending is like really sad. Um, and I believe they changed it for the movie. They did not have the same ending. They made the ending like a bit more hopeful or something. I don't remember it, but I'm pretty sure they changed the ending for it. I don't know about the TV show because I have not seen it yet. But so yeah. So this is the beginning of a trilogy. There are 3 books. The Subtle Knife is the next one, and the Amber Spyglass is the 3rd book. So I finished this one on the 21st of February. I gave it 5 stars because I really liked it. So, and this also is an older book than you might think. I didn't realize how old it was. So I am doing the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge for 2023, and one of the prompts is to read a book that was published in the year that you were born. This was published in the year that I was born, 1995. So, I mean, I didn't realize it was that old, honestly. And then another one of the prompts is to read a book that was written in the decade that you were born, and or takes place in the decade that you were born. And I was like, the second book takes like bits of it take place in like our world, or at least what seems like our world. So I was like talking to my boyfriend, and I was like, does this count as a book that takes place in the 90s? But I don't think it does. So the next book that I finished was Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. I did do this on Audible, and I did like it. So, there's that. So this is the second book in the Alex Stern series by Leigh Bardugo. So if you've read Shadow and Bone, this is different. This is much different. I have recently started the Shadow and Bone series, and honestly, I they're for different demographics. Shadow and Bone is more young adult. Hellbent, and Ninth House is the first book. They are more just adults. They're a bit more mature, and I think I prefer her young adult stuff better. Honestly, I don't normally say that, but I don't know. I don't like it as much. The Alex Stern series. I'm gonna continue it. I think there's only one more book, and it hasn't been published yet. This just came out in January, I believe. But I did like it better than the first one. I think I'm in the minority there, though. I don't think a lot of people like this book from what I've seen. I liked how it ended. I liked that there were like more main characters. I don't know if you could really call them main characters, but I felt like there was more going on than in the first book. The first book was just a mystery about like this one murder. So basically, in Ninth House, which is the first book, we're introduced to Alex Stern, who is the main character, and she is able to see ghosts, which is unusual. So magical powers do kind of exist, but not fully. Like you don't just have them. You have to do lots of rituals, and then you have to have a nexus, basically, and so there's a lot that goes into it. People aren't just like born with magical powers. That's not really how this fantasy world works, and it is just our world. Um, So she is invited to go to Yale for free, which, I mean, just regular college is expensive. So she goes and she joins Leth House. I'm not sure if you pronounce it Leth or Lethy. It is Lethe. I'm unsure of that. I'm just gonna say Leth though, because that sounds better in my head. So there are like 9 magical houses on Yale campus, and Leth House is one of them. They are the 9th house, hence the name. And they are in charge of basically keeping track and monitoring all of the rest of the houses and making sure that they're not doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, like murdering people. Um, so, and they're very small. They only have 3 members at uh, at Yale at the moment. Anyways, they don't have a bunch of people, and all of the other houses are basically made up of like Yale students who kind of think that they're better than everyone else. And like each house has different like specialties. Some are like talk to the dead. Some are able to do spells that give you like fame and fortune. So basically, like part of the story is that when the houses do rituals, one of the Leth House people need to be there to monitor it because ghosts, or greys as they're called in this world, are attracted to this rituals. So, and they can be harmful if if they like notice you a little bit too much. So she's an asset because she can see them. Um, but then her mentor in the first book, her mentor goes missing, and she's on her own. And there's a murder, and they need to figure that out. So that's what that book's about. And then this is the continuation. So she's now still trying to find her mentor, and they're still trying to kind of recover from everything that went down in the first book. And she she kind of groups up with a bunch of the characters from the previous book, and they kind of have to go on an epic adventure. And the ending, there a vampire shows up, and there's like demons and vampires, and it's very good. I liked it. So I finished this one on the 22nd of February, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I finished is And Another Thing by Ian Colfer. So this is the conclusion of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. However, I'm not sure whose idea this was. So Douglas Adams, who is the author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, his last book in the series was mostly harmless, and I do believe that he fully intended that to be the end of it, because they pretty much all die at the end. Spoiler alert. But they didn't. so, um, so it continues on in here, and it's a different author. It's a different like tone. It's a different writing style. There's new characters brought in who have never been mentioned before. Specifically Thor and then the other Asgardian gods. They're never mentioned in the first few books, and now suddenly they're characters. Like, um, I didn't particularly like this book. I give it 3 stars, which to me, so my rating system is different than Goodreads. If you go on Goodreads and you like hover over the stars, it'll kind of tell you like to give you an idea of what you should do. So for me, 5 stars is if I loved it. 4 stars is if I liked it. So for Goodreads, if you do 4 stars, it's if you really liked it. 3 stars for me is if it was okay. So I kind of find that like mid, like it was meh. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. And then 2 stars for me, I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it. And then 1 star, I hated it. It was awful. I am very. I don't rate books 1 star very often. I need to really not like a book to rate it 1 star. I don't think I've rated a single book 1 star so far this year. I have done a few 2 stars, and I've had like 5 stars. So 4 star and 3 star is generally what books get for me. But yeah, so, and this is a book that, or a series, I think, that is popular enough that I'm not going to try to recap the series because there's a lot of stuff that happens. But yeah, no, I give this 3 stars. I didn't particularly like it. If you are reading the series and you intend to read this because you're like, oh, it's the last book of the series, I need to read it to finish out the series, I don't think you do. It doesn't really add anything, in my opinion. The ending of this one is just as, like, vague as some others have been. So, like, it's not like it gives them all a happy ending, because it doesn't. It really doesn't. So, they don't, I can't say it gives them all a bad ending either, and it doesn't give them a happy ending. It's just kind of vague. The ending is just vague as to what happens to all the characters, or at least Arthur, who is the main character. To be honest, I've read this over a month ago. I don't fully remember the ending. But, yeah, I finished that one on the 28th of February. Yeah, the February I was just trying to cram all those books in, like, the last few days. So my favorite book of the month was obviously The Golden Compass, because I gave it 5 stars. It was my only 5-star. Alright, so my March wrap up. I read 7 books in total, 2 audiobooks, and 5 physical books. So the first book that I finished was a book that I started in February. I meant to finish it in February. I didn't quite get around to finishing it in February, but it is The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. And this, I really like this book. It's based on The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells, pretty sure. That came out, like, a long time ago. And basically, Dr. Moreau creates, like, hybrid animals who are grotesque. A bit grotesque to look at. They're like a bunch of animals basically shoved into a somewhat human form. I think they're all able to talk. At least in this book they are. They're all able to talk. They understand language, you know. They basically behave more like humans, but they don't really look like humans. They look kind of like furries, I suppose, but not attractive furries. If you're into that thing, like, even you wouldn't be, you know, like, yeah. So, they are very much, what is no. There's a word, and I cannot think of it. But I very much like this. So, this is about his daughter, Carlotta, and it does take place, from 2 different perspectives, from Carlotta's perspective and then from Montgomery's perspective, who is the caretaker of the estate, basically. And he is, I don't know if he would say that he's, like, in love with her. I think he does, like, say that he's in love with her, but, like, he's also much older than her, like, at least probably 10 years older than her. And she does not really feel the same way. So, he doesn't do anything, really. I think they kiss, like, once in the book, but, you know, he doesn't, like, try to do anything, I would say. But he definitely has some feelings for her. And so basically the plot of the book is, you know, they're kind of living somewhat peacefully. And then some guys come who are, one is the son of the guy who basically owns the place and has been, giving Dr. Moreau money, in return for hybrids that are supposed to work for him and work on his plantations. This does take place in Mexico, by the way. But, Dr. Moreau hasn't really been holding up his end of the deal. He hasn't been giving him any, of the hybrids. And anyways, his son ends up kind of coming and, like, not on his orders, just, it doesn't really say if the reason that he said he came was a lie or not, but they said that they were tracking down rebels. But anyways, he ends up really liking Carlotta. She likes him, and they end up getting engaged, and then that doesn't work out. But anyways, so stuff ends up happening. And yeah. That's all I'm gonna get into it without, giving it away. But I really like this. I gave this 4 stars, and I finished this on March 3rd. So it only took me a few days after February. Only a few days. The next book that I listened to was an audiobook. This was Unmasked by Paul Holes. This is a nonfiction book, and I gave it 3 stars. And I didn't really like it very much. There were parts that I liked, but I feel like I was misled by the synopsis. So basically, Paul Holes is he's like a lab tech guy, who a crime scene, like CSI, basically, is what he does. And he worked in California in like the 80s, 90s, 2000s, around there, somewhere around there. I'm not, 80s might be too soon, but I can't really remember. But so he kind of like, and he was a real person, this is basically an autobiography almost. Has been like really getting into looking into cold cases, and he stumbles upon the Golden State Killer case, which was not called the Golden State Killer at this time when he first learned of it. All they had on record for his county was just like rape cases, so they didn't know that he was a serial killer. So that's what this book is basically about, is the Golden State Killer. It's not really about unsolved cases, which I believe the full title of this book is Unmasked, My Life Looking into Cold Cases, or something like that. So that's not really what it's about. Like, he does go on and talk about some of the cases that he worked on, but it is mainly about the Golden State Killer. That is the main plot of this book. And that's not what I really wanted to read about. So that's why I gave it 3 stars, because I know he's a real person, and this was his real life, and he does kind of admit his failings, but I didn't like him. I didn't like him all that much. I feel like he made some very poor choices in his life, and yes, he was very successful, but like, how much does that matter in the grand scheme of things, over like your happiness and your health and your family? But anyways, yes, so I finished this on March 14th. The next book that I finished was another audiobook, and this was The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. So this is the book that I was talking about, where I've seen a lot of people like it, and I did not like it. This is a new book. It came out very recently in this year, and I didn't like any of the characters. That's like my main gripe with this book. I found all of the characters to be very like snobby, very full of themselves, and I know that's kind of like one of the characters, that's how she's supposed to be. That's kind of the point. But I didn't like the other characters either. So there's basically three main characters in this book. There's the bridegroom, who is never given a name, and like half the book is told from his point of view. And then there is Indigo, his wife, and which, if you read the book, you'll know what that expression meant. But and then there is Azure, who was Indigo's like childhood best friend, and the other half of the book is told from her perspective, and all of her perspectives are like in the past of their childhood, and then all of his perspectives are in the present. And I just didn't like any of them. Indigo is kind of meant to be like a psycho character, and you're not really supposed to like her. But I didn't like him either. And I didn't like Azure either. This was like marketed as a fantasy book too. It's not a fantasy book. If you're going into this thinking that there's gonna be magic, there's not. It's like fantasy in their head. Basically, it's they think that they're the two girls when they're younger. They think that they are fairies who were like kicked out of the Fae realm, and once they reach a certain age, like 18, they're gonna be able to go like do a ritual and go back to the Fae realm, and but magic doesn't actually exist in this book, so just understand that none of the magic stuff is actually real. And I really would not consider that a spoiler, because from the beginning, like, I kind of understood that the magic part of this book was not going to be real. Like, I feel like the author kind of tells you from the beginning that that's not what this is. It's more of a mystery. That's the genre that I put it as, mystery, because that's more of what I kind of saw it as. The next book that I finished was How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. I really enjoyed this book. I have read one other book by him. I read the Final Girl Support Group last year, and I really liked that book as well. This just came out. Like, I'm trying to read more new books, and this just came out, so I got it from my library, and which my library sucks at getting new books, so I'm really surprised they had this. But it was very good. It's a book that I don't know how much I can tell you without just giving away stuff. But, so it's basically about Louise, who is a 39-year-old mother, single mother, whose parents have just very suddenly and recently died in a car crash. So she goes back home and has to deal with her brother, who is not the most pleasant to her. They don't really get along. They're very different personalities. And so they have to go through the funeral and everything, and then they're cleaning out the house and stuff starts happening. And so basically their mom had a lot of puppets and a lot of dolls, and stuff starts happening with the puppets and the dolls, and that's all I'm gonna get into this. There's creepy puppets and creepy dolls, and yeah, some like really messed up stuff starts happening, and then they remember parts of their childhood that they've kind of repressed, and it's like everything's revealed in the end. There is a bit of a twist, and it is so good. It was so good. I gave it 5 stars. It was amazing. And I finished this one on the 27th of March. The next book that I read was The Republic of Pirates by Colin Woodard. This is nonfiction. It is about the golden age of piracy. And it is very like chronological. It basically goes from the beginning, and like it mainly focuses on 4 pirates: Charles Vane, Sam Bellamy, Blackbeard, and Benjamin Hornigold. And then it also focuses on Woodes Rogers, who is the guy who basically was responsible for ending the golden age of piracy. So it like starts off just talking about some of the reasonings behind men getting into piracy in the first place, and like why they were in the Caribbean, how they got Nassau as their base, and all that stuff. And it is very good. I really liked it. I feel like nonfiction books are always a bit more like dense to read, because there's a lot of information. There's not really a narrative going on. There's no dialogue, so it does take a little bit longer to read. But I really liked how he wrote this book. It was very good. So if you were into pirates at all, I would highly recommend this book. It was very good. I gave that one 4 stars, and I finished it on the 28th of March. The next book that I finished was Hour of the Witch by Chris Bojalian. Unsure about that. So I got this from my library. And this is a book that took place in like late 1600s Boston, so very much when the Puritans were in charge, and you weren't allowed to have fun, basically, especially as a woman. If you had fun as a woman, you were a witch. So if you don't know, the Salem witch trials took place in, I believe, the 1690s. So this was right around that same time period. So the main character, whose name Mary, I think Mary, yes. The main character, she is like early 20s, and she married a man. She's been married for like 5 years at the beginning of the book. She married a man who is in like 20 years her senior, and he's a very prominent figure in the town, and he's abusive. He's very abusive to her. But although Puritans are not the best of people, in my opinion, I'm not religious. I just don't really like religion, personally. But the Puritans are, like, the worst. They do allow divorce, but you have to petition for divorce. You basically have to present your case to a court of magistrates, who are all very prominent men in the town, and then they can decide whether or not you deserve to get divorced or not. So abuse is grounds for divorce. And but he's very good at being, he's like he's your typical abuser. He's a prominent man in town. He knows how to be very friendly to everyone else, and he knows how to hide his abuse. So he never, like, hits her in the face, or when he does, she lied about it. And during this time, lying was not okay. So, like, if she then went back on her word and was like, they would all be like, so you were lying? Why would you lie about that? But he eventually ends up stabbing her in the hand with a fork. So forks are a whole thing in this book. During this time, people used 2-pronged forks. And then 3-pronged forks became very popular back in Europe, and they kind of tried to bring them into America, but because of, Puritans, 3-pronged forks were seen as the devil's tines, basically, because a pitchfork has 3 prongs. So it was not, they didn't like 3-pronged forks. And so anyways, she gets stabbed in the hand with a 3-pronged fork. And she gets accused of bringing the forks in the first place, and of doing, like, some witchy spells. And she ends up deciding that she's going to divorce him because she's had enough. She fears for her life. And that's kind of what starts a whole thing in this book. So yeah, moving on. Anyways, I gave that 5 stars, and I finished that on March 30th. And then the last book of March was Severed Souls by Terry Goodkind. So, as I've already said, I am reading the Sword of Truth series. This was the 14th book in the series, the penultimate book. I have 1 book left, and then I will be done. And this book suffered from what most of the Sword of Truth books suffer from, and that is not enough editing. There's too much. It's 630 pages long. It doesn't need to be 630 pages long. There is a fight scene that's right around near the beginning of the book, and it's literally like 100 pages long. Not necessary at all. The ending, most of this book is literally just them traveling from one place to another. That's basically the entire book. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next book. I'm looking forward to it being done. And he does do a bit better when he's when he's doing the books that are basically the conclusion of story arcs. I do generally enjoy them a bit more than, like, the in-between books. So, like, this book and the last book, The Third Kingdom, I didn't love. But the first book of this arc was, God, I don't even remember what it's called now. I don't remember. I read it in like December, I think. The Omen Machine. That was it. So The Omen Machine was the first book in this arc. And the next one, Warheart, is the last book. So I think I'll enjoy Warheart a little bit more. I just wish that he would edit these a lot. So I still gave it 4 stars. And I finished this one on the 30th. It's hard to believe I finished this like only like 10 days ago, and yet it feels like it was like a month ago. Time flies. Alright, so my March, just wrap up. So my favorite book was How to Sell a Haunted House. I had 2 5 stars, but that was definitely my favorite one. And then I bought 2 books. I bought Cold People by Tom Rob Smith on Audible, and then I got The Magician King by Lev Grossman, but also on Audible, and that is the second book in the Magicians series. Alright, so let's get on to April in my TBR. Not all of these are TBR. Some of them are just continued. I have like 3 or 4 books that I'm just like have continuously. Alright, so the first book on my April TBR is The Magician King by Lev Grossman, and I'm doing that one on Audible. And I'm super excited. I love the TV show. I listened to the audiobook of the first book, and I think I'm gonna just read the 3rd book probably on Kindle. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm just curious about how, because it's generally around like the 2nd book that like TV shows and stuff start diverting away from the plot. So I'm curious to see where it goes. And then the next one is Cold People by Tom Rob Smith, and that is on Audible as well. So this is a new book. I believe it came out in January, and it's a science fiction, and it is about aliens that come to Earth. They invade Earth, and it's not about the aliens though. This book is not about aliens. It is about the people. So basically the aliens tell all of Earth, you have 30 days to get to Antarctica. And if you are not in Antarctica in those 30 days, well, you're probably going to die. So there's, a mass exodus of humanity to Antarctica. So that is basically, and it's about like a few different characters. But that's basically like what I know of the book at the moment. Have I almost finished it? Maybe. Am I going to talk about it? No. That's all you get. And then the next one is The Subtle Knife by Philip Pullman. This is the 2nd book in his Dark Materials, and it is substantially shorter than the first book. And spoiler alert, I already finished it. I finished this like 2 days ago. I'm not going to talk about it though. I'm just going to say this is the 2nd book and move on. We shall move on. And then the next one, Shadow and Bone. This is the first book in the Grishaverse series. So there's 3 series within the Grishaverse. There's Shadow and Bone. There's 6 of Crows, and then there is King of Scars. And so this is the first one. I'm planning on reading the entire Shadow and Bone series this year, and we'll see if I get into either of the other 2. I do have King of Scars. I got that for free on Kindle Unlimited, so I do have that book. But I think I'm gonna read that series last because it is the last published. I want to do 6 of Crows first. But I am almost done with this already, and I just gotta tell you, I'm loving it. If you don't know what this is about, it is a fantasy. It is set in a different like fantasy world that is like somewhat based on our own, but only like cultures. So the main country that this takes place in is Ravka, which is very much based on Russia. And the main character is Alina Starkov. She's just a regular soldier in the Ravka army. with her best friend Mal, and then she's not. All right, moving on. The next book is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. So I actually just started this last night. And I love Agatha Christie. You know, I love a good mystery. And I was looking at it and I was like what? So I'm obviously not gonna say it. I don't know if you'll maybe be able to see this or just like look into it. This is not the original name of the book. The original name of the book was, oh, can you see that? It's a little blurry, but like what? I don't believe it was ever published in the US under that name from what I saw, because I like immediately looked it up online and was like, what? So this has had like 4 different names. So it's had that name. It has been under the name 10 Little Indians, 10 Little Soldiers, which 10 Little Soldiers, just do that one. That's fine. Not offensive whatsoever. And then there were none. So basically it's based on a like child poem that is so 10 people are brought to an island, all for different reasons. They're like lured there. They're, you know, sent letters saying like, oh, you know, Mr. So and so, you know, would like to have your company, or you've got a job, or whatever. They've all been brought there under different circumstances at the same time, and then they are gonna get stuck there. I know that it just says that in the synopsis. There's gonna be a storm, and they're all gonna get stuck there, and then they're all gonna be picked off one by one. And they get picked off in the same way as the poem. So I believe the first line of the poem is 10 little Indians went out to dine. One choked his little self, and then there were 9. 9 little Indians, and then so on and so forth. So it seems like the first person who gets killed is going to be choked. So I am looking forward to it. So far, I'm liking it. It's introduced, you know, the main characters. I'm gonna try to like take notes, see if I can figure out who the killer is. But I'm liking it so far. And then the next book is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. And from what I understand of this book, it is like kind of a retelling of David Copperfield by Dickens, which I've never read before. I've read a few books by Dickens, but I've not read that one. And I'm not sure I even know what that's about, to be honest. So I'm a little bit in the dark here. My library does have that book, and it was checked out when I went there and got these 2 books, so I don't have it yet. I'm gonna finish these 2 and then go get it. Hopefully it will still be there. Should probably check and maybe just put it on hold. And so the last book is Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe. This is a nonfiction book. This is about the Sackler family. If I have any like non-Americans watching this, the US right now is currently going through an opioid epidemic. A lot of people are dying of like heroin overdoses, and fentanyl has become a problem in recent years. And it basically all stems from the overprescription of Oxycontin, which was a drug that was released. It's still prescribed, it still exists, but it was a drug that was originally released in, I believe, the late 90s or like mid 90s. It was somewhere around there. And it was produced by Purdue Pharma, which was owned by the Sackler family. And so they, I mean, irresponsibly marketed this drug, said that it, you know, had no side effects. It's an opioid. Every opioid has side effects. They said that it wasn't addictive. It's an opioid. Every opioid is addictive. So they basically were responsible for a lot of people getting addicted to OxyContin, you know, because they were prescribed it by their doctors. So if you're prescribed a medication by your doctor, you're going to trust your doctor and you're going to take it. So that led to a lot of people getting addicted to opioids. And a lot of those people then went on to either getting OxyContin illegally or moving on to heroin. And I mean, I don't think I need to tell you it's not a good thing. So yeah, and we're still struggling with it to this day. I believe it said in the beginning of the book that more people, and this was published in like a few years ago, 2021. So yeah, 2 years ago. Oh no, I was wrong. Oh wow. Okay, so no, it says it doesn't have. Okay, so it says 450,000 Americans have died of opioid-related overdoses. Um, these overdoses are the leading cause of accidental death in America, accounting for more deaths than car accidents, more deaths even than the most quintessentially American of metrics, gunshot wounds. In fact, more Americans have lost their lives from opioid overdoses than had died in all of the wars the country has fought since World War II. So that's where I got the World War II thing. So um, I'm not sure if that includes World War II or not. It does say since. That kind of leads me to believe that it does not include World War II, but that is still just absolutely heartbreaking. Um, it's destroyed a lot of people's lives, and this information that it was the Sackler family who was basically responsible for it is very recent, within like the last 5 years or so that this information has come out. And before then, they've always been like a somewhat secretive family. They're very wealthy, very wealthy. And they did have their names on many different art galleries and colleges and other institutes throughout not only the U.S. but throughout the world. So they were very like philanthropic, donated a lot of things. So a lot of people saw them as this good family, that donates a lot of their money to help good causes. Um, but ever since like the information came out that of what they did, uh, their name has been taken off of a lot of things. Such as the Metropolitan Museum in New York City used to have their name on one of their wings, and it's not there anymore. They've changed that. And probably most institutions, I would imagine, have probably taken the Sackler name off of their buildings because they don't want to be associated. The Sackler family is still very rich. I believe they got fined maybe a few $1 million, you know, and I believe they had to give up Purdue Pharma. I don't believe any of them are allowed to be on the board of Purdue Pharma anymore. I could be wrong about that, but I believe someone else runs that company now. Basically, slap on the wrist. That's all that is to them. It's heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. So moving on, last book I'm going to talk about, and then I'm going to wrap up. And this one I didn't intend to read, but then I was like, I'm just going to read it. So House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Crescent City series. I read the first book. I honestly can't remember the name of the first book. House of something and something. Earth and Blood, maybe. Um, and that was the first book by Sarah J. Maas that I ever read. I read it about 2 years ago, I think. And it was fantastic. I love that book. I literally read it, and it's like both of these are like 800-page books. I read it in 3 days, and I loved it. And that's what kind of got me to read Court of Thorns and Roses, and I loved that series. So I am 100% a Sarah J. Maas stan at this point. I love her series. I don't know if I'm ever gonna read Throne of Glass though. I think that's her first series, right? we'll see. I'll probably end up reading it eventually, but so that I'm reading on Kindle. And I actually just started it yesterday and I'm already like 100 pages into it. So, and that is it. Yeah, that's it. That's my April TBR. So I have 8 books on the docket, and I have finished one so far. I've almost finished. I have 2 more that are almost done. Um, there's only 2 that I haven't started yet. So I'm on a good track. I'm on a good track. So before we go, I just want to show you my new Kindle case because I have had a Kindle for a while and I just like never really used it much, and I'm getting more into using it. So I got this little case for it. It is hard. The back. It is magnetic. And I love it. I absolutely love it. That's the inside of it. It's not like good for like a stand because it doesn't have a stand, but like I hold it anyways, so I'm good with that. But I really love this. I got it on Amazon for like 10 bucks. All right. So that is everything. That is all my books. Oh. All my books that I've talked about, all the books I've read, all the books that I have bought, plan to read. Missing a few too. Like, oh, it's falling. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will check in with you next month. Happy reading.